Over there, no, not there. I moved my body. Guided by Lisa's voice, I followed her instructions, feeling awkward at first. My movements were stiff, almost robotic. But as I gave myself over to her guidance, a strange sense of rhythm took over. Gradually, I became more fluid, my hesitancy replaced by an unexpected enjoyment of the process. For a fleeting moment, I wondered, if we had spent more time like this when we were married, communicating, connecting, would things have turned out differently? Maybe we'd still be together, but it was too late for regrets. Or so I thought, until Lisa unexpectedly broke the silence. Liam, there's something I need to tell you. Before I share what she said, it's important to explain who Lisa is and who I am. My name is Liam. I'm a doctor, or at least I used to be, at a prominent university hospital. My career was more than a profession. It was a legacy. Born into a family of doctors, I grew up under the weight of their expectations. My childhood was shaped by loss and duty. When I was just 3 years old, my mother left our home. I don't remember much about her, just fragments, a soft smile, a sad look in her eyes. She left me behind with my father, who passed away when I was still in elementary school. After his death, my grandparents took over my upbringing. They were kind in their own way but strict, especially about discipline and academics. My path in life had been decided long before I could walk. I would become a doctor and carry on the family name. Looking back, I think my mother must have felt crushed under the same expectations. My grandfather ruled the family with an iron will, and my father had followed in his footsteps, prioritizing duty over personal happiness. My grandmother, ever obedient to my grandfather, believed this was the right way to live. But my mother, she wasn't like them. Treated like little more than a maid and pressured to bear children, she must have reached her breaking point. "I'm sorry, Liam," she had said to me, tears brimming in her eyes. "I couldn't take you with me. At the time, I didn't understand. I only felt abandoned and lonely. But as I grew older, I began to see her choice through a lens of compassion. She had no other option. Even now, my clearest memory of her is her trembling hands trying to wipe away tears she couldn't hide. After she left, life continued under the strict guidance of my grandparents. They ensured I lacked nothing materially, but emotionally, I was left wanting. My days were filled with study, preparation, and an unrelenting focus on the future. Success wasn't just expected, it was demanded. When I turned 33, I married Lisa. She was a fellow doctor at the hospital, a brilliant, driven woman who shared my passion for medicine. We were a perfect match on paper, and for a while, it seemed like we were in sync. Neither of us wanted children, understanding that our demanding careers left little room for family life. Instead, we poured our energy into work, building promising futures for ourselves. In the early days of our marriage, we made time for each other. We celebrated anniversaries, went on vacations, and found joy in the rare moments of reprieve from our hectic schedules. But gradually, the relentless pace of our lives caught up with us. Work consumed everything. Late nights at the hospital turned into missed dinners, and our days off rarely aligned. Slowly, the intimacy we once shared faded away, replaced by silence and distance. One day, one of us, perhaps me, perhaps her, finally voiced what we'd both been feeling. What's the point of being together anymore? That simple question marked the end of our marriage. The divorce was swift and devoid of drama. There were no arguments or drawn-out legal battles, just a mutual acknowledgement that our relationship had run its course. On a bitterly cold winter day, we signed the papers, and that was that. After the divorce, Lisa left the hospital. I only learned of her departure through a colleague, and I never discovered whether she left medicine entirely or simply moved to another institution. As for me, I stayed on, but my passion for the work began to wane. The hospital, once my sanctuary, became a constant reminder of my failures, not just as a husband, but as a person. Each time I discharged a patient and watched them leave, surrounded by their smiling families, a pang of loneliness struck me. I began questioning everything. Was this all there was to life? To climb the career ladder, accumulate wealth, and then die alone? 2 years after the divorce, I quit the hospital. By then, both my grandparents had passed away, leaving me truly alone. Though I had savings to sustain me, I found myself trapped in a cycle of inertia, unsure of how to move forward. I spent my days in solitude, haunted by questions I couldn't answer. What does happiness look like for me? Where do I go from here? Then, one day, Lisa called. Her voice, familiar yet distant, startled me. "I need you to meet someone," she said. Before I could ask questions, she named a time and place, a coffee shop, and hung up. When I arrived, Lisa was already there. She looked different, healthier, more at peace. But she wasn't alone. Sitting beside her was a young woman in her 20s, her features strikingly unfamiliar. "It's been a while," Lisa said, looking me up and down. "You don't look great." She wasn't wrong. My diet had been erratic, and my appearance reflected my neglect. "You seem well," I replied cautiously. Then, glancing at the young woman, I asked, "Who is she? Is she your sister?" Lisa shook her head, a faint smile on her lips. "No, Liam, she's yours." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "I'm an only child. You know that. My mother left when I was 3, and my father passed away years ago. I don't have any siblings." Lisa took a deep breath, her expression softening. "Your mother remarried after she left. This is Missy, your half-sister. She was born from your mother's second marriage." The words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I had never considered the possibility that my mother might have started a new family. Yet as I looked at Missy, it all began to make sense. For the first time in years, I felt something stir within me, an emotion I had heard once that my mother had been in her early 20s when she left me behind. I often wondered what might have driven her to make such a painful decision. But until that day, I had never sought the answers, content to let the mystery of her absence linger in the background of my life. Now, sitting across from a young woman who claimed to be my sister, I was forced to confront emotions I had buried long ago. Missy, the woman in her 20s who sat beside my ex-wife Lisa, lowered her head slightly, her hands clasped tightly together. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with a mix of sincerity and nervousness. "Nice to meet you," she began. "I know this must be shocking for you, and I sincerely apologize if I've upset you. But I've been searching for you for a long time." I blinked, my mind struggling to process her words. "Searching for me? Why? For what purpose?" Despite my confusion, I managed to respond with a soft, "It's all right. I understand. But why were you looking for me now?" Missy hesitated, her gaze flickering between Lisa and me. Then, as if summoning courage, she finally spoke. "Our mother has passed away." The words hit me like a freight train. My breath caught, and for a moment, the world seemed to tilt off its axis. Though decades had passed since I'd last seen her, I had always assumed my mother was still out there somewhere, alive, living a life beyond my reach. She's gone," I whispered, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. Missy nodded solemnly. "Yes, she passed away peacefully, surrounded by her family. But until her last moments, she deeply regretted leaving you behind. She was always concerned about you, always wondering if you were okay." Her voice cracked slightly, and she glanced down, fidgeting with her hands. "Before she died, she made me promise to find you. She wanted me to tell you that she never stopped thinking about you and that she loved you. She wanted to know if you were happy, if you were doing well." Tears welled in my eyes, and I quickly looked away, trying to mask the emotions that surged within me. The thought of my mother, a woman I had scarcely known, spending her life burdened by guilt and longing, was almost too much to bear. She was looking for me. I asked, my voice breaking. Missy nodded. Yes. She didn't know much about where you were, only your name, and that you were likely still in medicine. She went to hospitals asking, "Do you know anyone named Liam?" She was determined, even when it seemed hopeless. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. The image of my mother, a woman I had always remembered as quietly crying, wandering hospital halls, searching for a son she hadn't seen in decades, was both heartbreaking and beautiful. Though I had never imagined having a sister, the connection I now felt with Missy was undeniable. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of warmth in my heart. "I'm surprised," I admitted, struggling to find the right words. "I didn't expect any of this, but I'm glad we've met. And I'm glad to know that she never forgot me." Missy smiled softly. She didn't. Not for a single day. After a moment of silence, I hesitated before asking the question that weighed most heavily on my mind. Was she happy? Missy's expression brightened. Yes, she was. She adored my son, her grandchild, and she loved my father deeply. He treated her with so much care and respect. We were all there when she passed. She was at peace. Hearing this, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My mother, who I had always pictured as a sorrowful figure, had found a family who cherished her. She had lived a life filled with love and joy. "I'm glad," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm truly glad." Lisa, who had been quietly observing, placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. The warmth of her touch was familiar, almost nostalgic, and for a moment I felt grounded. Some days later, the three of us, Lisa, Missy, and I, visited my mother's grave. Missy brought an old photo album filled with pictures of our mother's life after she left. There were snapshots of her in a work apron, smiling brightly, photos of her wedding with Missy's father, and images of her cradling her grandchild with pure joy etched on her face. Every single picture showed her smiling, a stark contrast to the tearful image I had carried in my mind for so long. Though I would never have the chance to speak to her again, knowing she had found happiness was enough for me. After our visit, I promised Missy we would meet again. Her 10-year-old son, my nephew, was eager to meet me, and the thought of connecting with a new family member filled me with unexpected excitement. As I walked home that evening, Lisa accompanied me. Her presence was comforting, and as we talked, I found myself reflecting on our past. "Maybe I should practice some video games," I said suddenly, remembering that Missy's son was a fan. "I'd love to bond with him over that." Lisa chuckled. "Why don't you come over to my place?" I raised an eyebrow, curious. "Why?" "You'll understand when you see," she said with a mysterious smile. When we arrived at her apartment, I was stunned. Her living room was filled with gaming consoles and a collection of games. "I never thought I'd see you get into gaming," I said, laughing. Lisa grinned. When I moved to the clinic, my work-life balance improved. No more late nights, no weekend shifts. I had time for hobbies, and I got hooked on gaming. As we sat down to play together, memories of our time as a couple resurfaced. For the first time, I wondered if we had focused more on moments like this, simple, joyful moments. Would we have drifted apart? Lisa must have read my thoughts. "You're thinking about us, aren't you?" she asked. Caught off guard, I nodded. "Yeah, I regret not appreciating the time we had." Lisa smiled. "It's okay. We were different people back then. I don't regret our divorce. It helped us grow. But I'm glad we're here now, as friends." Her words resonated deeply. That day, I resolved to stop dwelling on the past and to start embracing the present. Now, my life feels fuller than ever. I reconnected with my passion for medicine at a small private clinic. I bonded with my nephew over video games, and Lisa and I remained close, sharing laughter and memories. One day, while gaming with Lisa and my nephew, the boys suddenly asked, "Why aren't you two getting married again?" Lisa laughed, her eyes twinkling. "That's up to Liam," she teased. Her playful response made my heart race. As I glanced at her, I knew I wanted to explore the possibility of rekindling what we once had. For the first time in years, my life feels peaceful, filled with love, family, and purpose. Does this expanded version capture the emotions and depth you were looking for?